Hello data nerds, what's up? In this video, we are going to learn a very important Power BI DAX function, which is values function. So we'll study everything about values, that what is the syntax, how does the formula work, when do we use it, and then we'll also understand that how does values function differ from a different Power BI DAX function, which is distant. Right? To a large extent, these two functions, that is values and distant, work in the same way, but they also differ in a very unique way that we need to understand. And we'll establish that concept as well in this session later, right? So let's first start with the values function, okay? Yes, so first things first, that what is values function? Values function is a function in Power BI DAX which gives you a table as output depending upon what kind of input you have provided to it. Now, when I say that depending upon the input you provide, that means that values function accepts two kinds of inputs. One as table name and another as column name, right? So you can give a table name as well, just a table to values function, and it will give you a table. And you can also give a column name from a table and then it will give you certain result. Now, what that result would be, that we'll understand. So yes, as I said, that what does values return? It returns a table. So we just saw that values function accepts two inputs. One is column name, one is table name. When the input parameter is a column, then it returns a single column table of distant values. Now this is very important. Imagine you have a table. In that table, there's a column which has duplicate values, right? So maybe you have an employee ID as a column in the table, employee table, and that employee ID has some duplicate values, but you want to have a column which should have only distant values of employee ID. You are going to give that column to values function, and values function is going to remove all the duplicate from that column and just going to give you a distant column table. But remember, the result will always be a table. Okay, that's a very important thing that we need to remember. One thing, if you have blank in that column, values function is not going to remove that blank. It's going to preserve that blank as well. Okay, so that is when your input parameter is a column. Now, what happens when my input is a table? Then, what does it say? It says that when a table is given as input, it returns a table with the same columns. So it will have all the columns that you gave, which means entire table, with all the duplicated and blank rows if present, which means that if you have given a table as an input to the values function, and in that table, there is a column which has duplicated rows, values function is not going to remove those duplicate values. It's not going to remove those blanks. It's just going to give you everything the way you gave, pretty much everything, right? We'll understand that. So this is the difference of output you see depending upon the input. Now, if you guys are familiar with Excel, we had a similar kind of function to deal with this problem in Excel as well. Do you remember? Let me just show you. So here in Excel, now I have an employee ID, right? Now it had some duplicate value. So I can see employee 101 is getting repeated thrice. But I want a column which should not have any duplicated values. What would I do? Think. You remember that? We had a function called unique. And then we just take the whole column, we close it, ta-da, 101 is removed. You know, you don't see 101 getting repeated anymore. This thing that you're able to remove the duplicates from the column, that you can do in Excel, the same thing values helps you do in Power BI. There was another way as well to remove duplicate, which was just select the column and go to data, and then you'll have something called remove duplicates. If you click here, this will also remove the duplicates, and yes, that's it. 6 duplicate values were removed. You see, 101 is only there now in one row, right? So that's it. I just wanted to show you that this is the problem that we are trying to solve in Power BI as well. So let's go back to the Power BI. Now, I think we are done with the theoretical part. Speaking of theoretical concepts, I just want to remind you, go and read Microsoft documentation that Microsoft provides. It's always very useful. I will just, as you can see on my screen, there's a values function. So you can get everything about values function. So once you are done with this video, I want you to give it a read. I want you to understand each and every part of it. Okay, it's always a good habit to read authenticated articles, right? Yeah, so that being said, let's just start writing the formula. I have taken two small tables. One is customer table and one is sales table. Okay, customer table has customer ID and customer name. If you look carefully, there's no duplicate values in this. We just have 5 customer ID and respective customer names, right? And then we have sales. In that we have sales ID, customer ID and amount, and again customer ID is getting repeated. I see 101 getting repeated twice. Sales ID 1, 101, 500. Again sales ID 1, 101 500. So there's a data anomaly in this table. Remember that. Second thing, I see that there's a blank value as well. Customer ID is not completely present, so we have a blank value as well. Now keep that in mind, because values function is going to help us remove all that problems. So I'll just add a new page. Quickly, let's start writing the formula. So we'll go to the modeling and we'll add a new table. Why? Because values returns a table, right? So we'll just add the new table and we'll just write value 1. Okay, in this I'm just going to give table as an input to the values function. So first values, this is the function that I was talking about. Okay, now when you see, read this, it says table name or column name. There's only one argument to this formula, and that argument is table name or column name. And below that it says when a column name is given, returns a single column table of unique values. I think we discussed this. And then second, when a table name is given, returns a table with the same columns. Okay, now let's see. I will just give the customer, maybe I'll just give the sales table. Okay, sales table, and close it, click commit. Yes, so we have one value, one created, right? We'll go to the table view and we'll see what has happened. I can see that I still have 9 sales IDs, I still have duplicate customer IDs, and I still have blanks. Exactly like sales table. So let's go back to sales table and see how was it. It was like, this is the sales table. You can see the name of table here. So we had like this. And if I just come back to values table, which we have created with the help of values, it's exactly like that. So nothing gets removed. Very important to remember that we might get confused that when we give sales table, table as an input to values, we might think that it might remove the distant rows in table, but it does not. When you give table as an input, it does not do anything. It just gives you everything as it is. Very important difference to remember. Okay. Now this time I gave I gave the whole table as an input, right? Now I just want to give one column from this table. So in sales table, I had customer ID. This is the problematic column, right? We have duplicates and we have blanks. So I would like to give this column in values function now. So again, what are we supposed to do? We're going to select new table, because values function always gives table. So now values, just write values 2. Okay, values. This time we are going to give a column name as an input, and the column name was customer ID from sales table. Okay, yes, so we have values to create it. And very important thing to understand, first let's see sales table, how customer ID was there. In sales table and in customer ID column, we had 101 repeated twice, 102 repeating twice, 103 we also had repeated twice, and then we had 104, 106, right? Let's see what difference values function has made when we gave the column name. It has removed all the duplicated values from this column, but it has preserved the blank cell, and then it has given one column in the table. That's it. As we saw, when we gave the whole table as an input to values function, it did not do anything. It did not remove the duplicate rows. It did not remove the blanks. But when we gave just a column to the values function, it preserved the blank cell, but it removed all the duplicate values. I think we are clear with how values function react to a table and a column, right? Now, before we understand the difference between values function and distant function, I want to do a little experiment with distant function. How does it work? So when we see them separately, it will be easy for us when we compare them, right? Let's do that. So I will just again create a table, and I will just write distant 1. Okay, I'll just add this. It also asks a column name or a table expression. Read this. Returns a one column table that contains the distinct unique values in a column for a column argument, or multiple columns for the distinct unique combination of values for a table expression argument. Again, it also gives a table, yeah, and it also takes a column name or a table expression. It also takes both kind of arguments, right? We'll just give the whole table, sales table, we are giving to distant. We'll click commit and we'll see what does it do. We have distant 1 created. Let's see what happens. Okay, now distant 1, if you remember, sales table had 101 customer ID repeated, but do you see that repeated row here? We don't see it because distant function has removed that duplicated rows. So I think this is one of the differences you can remember between values and distant function. Again, let's go back to value 1. You see this row and this row, it was duplicate, but when we gave the sales table in values, it did not remove them. Distant did. You don't find that duplicate row anymore. Currently we gave a table as an argument. Now we'll give a column as an argument. Okay, again, let's go back to new table. One sec, it's working. Yeah, now we'll write distant 2. Okay, and we are going to give a column name, and the column name would be customer ID from sales table, because that was the problematic column that we saw. And just will hit the commit. Yes, so again, in this column, all the duplicate cells have been removed, exactly the way values worked. If we check the values too, this is what it did, right? This is values table that we have created. It also removed all the duplicate, but it preserved the blank. Same thing distant also did. It also removed all the duplicates and it preserved blank. So now we have established that if we give a column to values and distant, they pretty much work the same. But if we give a table to distant and values, they differ. Distant removes the duplicated rows, but values does not remove. Okay, from my experience, as much as I've worked with Power BI, I've not used the values function just like that to create a table. We don't do like that. We often wrap it inside an aggregated function. So maybe you have this values too. Maybe you want to see how many distant customer ID do we have. Then what are you supposed to do? You're just supposed to wrap it inside an aggregated function, which can be count rows, distant count, max, min. In this case, we can use count, right? So let's create measure, and that will be, since you are using an aggregated function, and the result will be a value, right? It will not be a column, it will not be a table, it will be a value. So in that case, you're going to create a new measure. And then this would be value example. And what we'll do, we were first creating values, remember, values, and then we were giving customer ID, right, from sales table. So this is my column. What will this do? This will first remove all the duplicated values from customer ID column, but we don't want that. We want to see that how many unique customer IDs do we have. What are we supposed to do? So we'll just write count rows. Here is count rows. Now when I clicked on count rows, you see it tells you that what kind of argument I accept. So count rows is telling that I accept a table. So you have to give me a table. Then I can count the number of rows, right? Now this values function, when we give it customer ID inside values function, what does it return? It returns one column in a table. And that's why we can pass this result inside count rows. Okay, so keep reading everything. That will make more sense instead of just blindly writing the formula. Let's hit the commit button. We'll just add this KPI card and that values example. It gives me 6. Let's go back and see that did we actually have 6 distant customer ID? Let's go back. Let's go back to values 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we had 5 distant customer IDs and 1 blank. So values counts blank as well. That's why you see 6 here, right? So that is one thing. Now, can we do the same exercise with distant as well? Let's see. Again, we'll just create a measure and we'll just write distant example. Okay. So first we'll create that one column in the table with customer ID from sales, and then we'll not just stop here because this will give a table and we do not want a table. What do we want? One value. We want to count that how many distant customer IDs we have. So we are going to wrap it up inside count rows. And we saw that count rows only accepts a table. So again, this whole distant sales customer ID, this is going to give you a table, and that's why we can wrap it up inside count rows. Very important to understand this. And just again add one extra KPI and bring you distant example as well. Same result, right? 6, 6, which means that distant also counts the blank because we had 5 distant values and then we had 1 blank, and distant is counting that blank as well. And that's why we have 6 number of rows it's giving. Okay, so that was one thing. So currently you see we have a relationship between these two tables, right? First we'll remove them, okay? And we'll calculate two measures, and then again we'll come back, we'll establish the relationship, and we'll see the difference, okay? We'll create two measures, and what will be those two measures? That we are going to count the distinct customer ID from customer table, right? The unique table that we had. You remember we had a customer table, right? It had everything unique. So from this table, we are going to count that how many customer IDs we have, distinct customer IDs, okay? Quickly create two measures. So this is going to be values example 2, and this is going to be values, okay? Now what do you want? Customer ID you want, but from customer table. This is done. Now we just do not want a table in return, we want the count. So we are going to use count rows and wrap this up. Okay, so this is ready. So we'll create another measure, and this time we'll do the same thing with distant example 2, right? Again, same thing, distant ID from customer table, okay? And then wrap it up inside count rows, okay? Pull two KPIs, bring values example 2. This shows 5, okay? Bring one more KPI and bring distant example 2. This also shows 5. Of course, because if you go to customer, we had only 5 distant customer IDs, and that's why they are showing 5, right? We'll just pull a table as well. Something very important I'm going to show you, so pay attention. We'll just bring customer name from customer table, and then we'll bring these two measures which we just created. That was one values example 2 and distant example 2, right? Simple, it's showing the names and then it's showing 1, 1, 1 to all the 5, right? Nothing bizarre. But what happens when I establish the relationship between these two tables? Let's see. So we have customer ID in customer, and then we have customer ID in sales, right? It shows that from sales table to customer table, you are establishing many to one relationship, because sales table has duplicate values, customer table has unique values. So sales table will be on the side of many, and that's why you see many to one, means this is many and this is 1, okay? If customer table would have been in the upper side and sales table would be here, then it would be 1 to many. That's it. Nothing very brainer here. Yes. So you see, I'll just zoom it out if it's good for you. See, on the customer side, we have just 1, and then on the sales side, we have the star, which means many. Okay, so we have established a 1 to many relationship between customer and sales. Let's go back. Now what happened? Now you see the difference. Before we established the relationship, it was both 5 and 5, but now this became 6, this remained 5. But this is important difference that we are going to understand. When we did not have a relationship between customer and sales, then it was just counting the customer, the 5 distant values, right? No matter we used values or we used distant, it was showing 5, 5. But now after we established the relationship, something changed. What changed? In values example, which means the customer IDs that we were counting with the help of values, that became 6. Even though we have 5 distant values in the customer ID from the customer table, but this is showing 6. Why? Because we have established the relationship between them, and if you remember, we had a mismatch in the number of customer IDs in customer table and sales table. Very important. Pay attention. In customer table, we had 5 customer IDs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in sales table, we had one extra customer ID, which was 106. And this 106 was not present in our customer table, right? Now, this extra customer ID we had in sales table that we did not have in customer table. And when we established the relationship between customer and sales, just think like a layman, just to make you understand, I'm going to say this, that in backend, customer ID created a blank row, right, to accommodate that extra customer ID from sales table. And values function, very important, values function counts that blank as well. And that's why it's showing that, okay, after you establish a relationship, I see something. I see that the relationship that you established, it had some mismatch. So it has a mismatch, and that's why I'm going to count that blank, and I'm going to tell you that there was a mismatch. You do not have the exact number of customer IDs in customer table and sales table. So this is a great way to check. Okay, even after establishing the relationship, if you see the distinct, it still remained 5. Now this extra counting that values function does, this can be used as an important trick to identify that there was a mismatch in establishing the relationship, right? Because distinct didn't count it, values did. If you're establishing the relationship between two tables and you just want to be sure that do we have the same number of rows between these two tables, especially of that column on the basis of which you are establishing the relationship. In my case, I was establishing the relationship on the basis of customer ID, and we had a mismatch. So in customer table, we had one less customer ID than sales, and that was highlighted by values. So this can be used to check the integrity of two tables when you establish the relationship between those two tables, right? So yeah, so this is where values function differ and values function helps. So yeah, this was about values function. This is how values function work, and this is how it differs from distant function. It can be an important interview question, and it's better conceptual wise as well if you understand the difference. So it will help you check the integrity of the relationship and things like that. I want you to practice with a small data set. So take 2 small data sets, establish relationship between them, try to create the measure and then remove the relationship, and then experiment with these little data sets. That will help you understand the concept. And that was it for this video. So we're going to meet in the next video with a new DAX function. Bye bye.